third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there and way second
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. We have the most exciting episode in a while because it is the season preview episode with the season. By the time this comes out, the season will be the next day. So definitely excited for that. A lot to get into with that. But before we get to that, we do have some, I guess, bad news. It's definitely bad news to talk about. It's kind of right after we spoke last. A couple days later in spring training game, Rhys Hoskins tears his ACL on kind of like a short hopper to first that he backed up on, went back for it, went right down, looked bad from the start, was bad. So Phillies have a huge void to fill there, which we'll get into in a second. And then a few days ago, the Phillies and Aaron Nola kind of cut off talks for a contract extension before the season, which is something both sides were kind of aiming for as a deadline. Now, this isn't rare, I guess. The Phillies were unable to do this with JT Realmuto too, and then we're able to sign him before he got to free agency after the season. It's possible that happens. I think the Dodgers and Clayton Kershaw did this like 3 times where they couldn't get it done before the year, and then right after the season got it done. So I'm not overly concerned, but it is obviously more of an issue that they didn't sign him than they did at this point, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not in full panic mode yet, but like you brought up JT, I think the market for Nola in the offseason is going to be so much different than JT's market was, just because like you take out Ohtani from the free agent market because he's kind of the anomaly.
Yeah.
But realistically, like going into free agency, like the 2 guys that you just brought up were going to be the best bat and pitcher respectively. Like Hoskins has, if he put together another Hoskins type year this year, he was probably going to be the best bat on the market, and Nola should easily be the best arm on the market. So there's going to be a lot of bidders for a 30. He'll be 30 in the offseason, 31.
Yeah, somewhere there, yeah.
So we'll say 30-year-old starting pitcher who has top 5 finishes in the Cy Young voting pretty much every year, compared to the 29-year-old catcher whose prime kind of obviously last year was still in the peak of his prime, but historically catcher's prime tails off around 29 or 30. So I don't know. I'm not fully panicked yet, but the bidding war should be a lot more intense than it was with JT.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I will say maybe the one thing that works in the Phillies' advantage is that Ohtani is also likely, unless he's traded and extended, then is also, is going to be the free agent name. And all the big market teams, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, are all supposedly going to be going after him hard. So if they're all focused on him and the Phillies could quietly get something done with Nola, make him their number one, attention going into the offseason, it will certainly give them a chance there too. So him kind of being the second biggest name in free agency hurts, but in a way it also helps because the other name is so big that everyone else is going to turn their attention to him first.
Yeah, they definitely would benefit if Ohtani kind of drew his free agency out like a Harper type thing, unlike kind of like Judge this offseason. He got it done relatively quickly, but based on other free agency sagas that we've seen to say. But if everybody's kind of focused on Ohtani and he signs quick, then like say the Mets get Ohtani, the Dodgers are going to pivot to Nola so quickly that they'll probably overpay.
Yeah.
But they'll just snipe him right off the market so fast.
Yeah, that is a possibility. So that is something that hopefully we talk about after a World Series win. I think losing him would hurt either way, but coming off of that, maybe a little less of a sting. So let's get into that. I have what is supposed to be the schedule here, or not the schedule, the roster. Yeah. So not too many surprises. Obviously, Ranger Suarez is starting the year on the IL, so Matt Strom is going to be the fifth starter, which opens the door for Marte and Vasquez to get those last two bullpen spots. Outfielders, we talked about this last time. Jake Cave is just on an absolute tear. It seemed destined to make the team after the first 10 games, so no surprise there. Dalton Guthrie gets the nod. I think that has to do with the fact he could play center.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely why I think he's here. And then the infield, it didn't look like Derek Hall was honestly going to make the team, but then Rhys Hoskins gets hurt, and Derek Hall goes from not making the team to like the second or third most important bat in this lineup in a matter of a day. So just kind of your thoughts here. I know considering the injuries, there's not a ton of surprises.
Yeah, I wasn't really too caught off guard for anything. Like we kind of touched on the last pod that we did, obviously before the Rhys injury, but like the most important thing was kind of like the last starter spot, bullpen spot, who's kind of going to end up on the roster in those sort of roles. So I guess overall that's a good problem to have in spring training. But I think going into the season, the roster is definitely better than it was last year.
Yeah.
So I guess you can't be too mad about that. But yeah, Hall's definitely going to have to step up with the whole that Rhys kind of leaves in the middle of the lineup and at first base. So we will see if he's able to if they get a platoon for him and replicate the production, or at least come close to what Hoskins gives the lineup.
Yeah. Just looking at this quick, you said it's one of the best rosters they've come north with in a really long time, and that's true. I mean, and I also look at this, the fact like in 2 or 3 weeks into the season, Ranger Suarez is going to become Matt Strom, and then Matt Strom becomes Vasquez in the bullpen. And then, maybe early June, Jake Cave becomes Bryce Harper. And then, maybe late June, July, maybe Andrew Painter or Mick Abel become Bailey Falter. And then at the trade deadline, maybe Derek Hall becomes CJ Crone or Christian Walker, which the two guys we threw in a lot. Or, Bobby Dalbec is a name that I think is going to come up just because the Red Sox have a lot of corner infielders with Turner, Cassis, and Devers. Obviously, one of them has to DH. So I think he is the odd man out there. So I could see him becoming available at the deadline. And then if that was to happen, I think we're looking at a platoon, righty-lefty platoon with Hall and him. But yeah, so as good as it is now, by the midway point of the season, it can honestly be a lot better.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned, I know it's not at the forefront of our mind with where we're at as far as our roster construction, but the majority of those guys that you just mentioned showing up in the middle of the season are all in-house already. So it's kind of like a trade deadline acquisition without having to give anything up. So you're keeping that farm system relatively fresh, and you're not emptying it just because injuries have happened.
Yeah, that is nice. And honestly, they made a couple tough cuts, I thought. Scott Kingery actually gave them something to think about, is what Gelb said that this week, that the Phillies were legitimately thinking about bringing him up with the team. He might get his chance, and it might come in the outfield too, which would be very important. Clemens, who they got in the Soto deal as well, is going to come up, I think, at some point, especially if Hall struggles. He's going to be the first guy up. So, they do have some other options there if needed. So, yeah, definitely deeper, which helps. So, yeah, looking forward to it. Bullpen, a lot of those guys had good springs. Soto didn't. I know he was late coming and everything, but everyone else like really liked what I saw this spring.
Yeah, going back to the two guys that you mentioned in the field, Kingery, if Guthrie gets him at bats early on and he doesn't like look particularly great, like Kingery we've seen him play center field in Citizens Bank Park before.
Yeah.
So like that's not out of the realm of possibilities. And with Clemens, I saw this floating around. So he was obviously in the Soto deal where we gave up Vierling and Maton. I forget who posted it, but if you put like the side-by-side stance of Cody Clemens and Nick Maton, they're like identical.
That's
and
funny.
I know we were all upset about Maton going, and I think part of that was, I mean, obviously he was very good. He showed signs, but I think we just loved like the energy and kind of what he brought to the clubhouse. So seeing Clemens similar, and he had a pretty good spring by all means. So I think if Clemens gets a chance, it could be similar to Maton type production. But yeah, Soto was the only guy that didn't look good in the bullpen really all spring. And aside from Kimbrel, he's the only guy in the bullpen that has an all-star appearance. So I don't think there's much to worry about there.
True. Yeah, that is true. So yeah, I'm excited for the bullpen. MLB put out their top 10 bullpens today, and the Phillies were 7, and it was just weird seeing them there, considering we are 2 years removed from legitimately like the worst bullpen ever. So just to see them on that list felt so good. And, you know, it's always been the missing link for this team, and to finally it be a strength is going to say a lot about them this year, I think. So that is really exciting to me. I know like bullpens don't really get the hype, but when you've seen as many games blown in the 8th or 9th as we have over the years, like it does get you excited. So definitely looking forward to that. So these are what I think the there we go. What the lineups are going to be to start the year. So Turner and the top 3 do not change, no matter if it's righty or lefty. Turner, Schwarber, Real Muto, that seems to be a lock. I'm assuming when Harper comes back, he'll take the 4 spot. I think JT is gonna stay 3, just because they're gonna split up the lefties with Schwarber. Yeah. And then when they're facing a righty, it's gonna be Hall in the cleanup spot, and then when it's a lefty, we see Amundo Sosa play 3rd and Bohm play 1st. And Cave and Guthrie are probably interchangeable, honestly. So that's that in a way. Yeah,
I mean, I think those look pretty good as far as what, like, pretty close to what the lineups will actually be. It just the Hoskins injury obviously leaves a hole in the lineup, but also Bohm's like been going back to the playoffs, like he started to look okay at 3rd, like the footwork's getting better, and he seems to get more confident there. It just stinks that he's going to have to kind of rotate and move off of 3rd, where he's starting to get comfortable, just because of like they don't really have the in-house platoon for Hall right now.
Right. Yeah, that is the problem. Obviously, it helps. Josh Harrison and having Sosa pretty much makes it a platoon at 3rd more than 1st in a way, which obviously doesn't help with Bohm getting comfortable. That is going to be something to keep an eye on. I'm also interested to see if Harrison takes some ABs away from Stott at 2nd if they're facing a tough lefty, or if they're going to let him ride every day from here on out, because he did not have a dominant spring. It was still pretty good, but we're going to see, I guess, how much he improves in year 2 as the first full-time starter coming in the year.
Yeah, I'll admit I was kind of in and out on Stott's at bats, but some of them that I saw, he was still getting beat by high fastballs.
Yeah, that's been a problem.
That'll be, and I know he talked about he watched the playoffs over again, and that's what he saw was the adjustment that he had to make. So I think going into the season, their plan at least should be to give Stott and even Marsh like the majority of the at-bats against lefties just because they're so young and you want them to develop into everyday guys. But I think if Stott starts or continues to show that he struggles with velocity, especially with some of the guys that are in our division, I think they'll look to give Harrison more at-bats.
Yeah, I do think, especially if the team's struggling early without Harper and reeling without Hoskins, I do see that being a possibility more often for sure. And then the last guy I wanted to touch on was obviously Castellanos, because there was already pressure on him without Harper. Now he's pretty much the number one, right? Well, I guess Turner in a sense, but in terms of RBI production, he's probably the number one right-handed bat in this lineup now. His spring wasn't bad. He only hit 235, but his OPS was 842. And I know it's the spring, but that's 150 points higher than his OPS was the entire season last year. So I think he's going to bounce back. I don't know if we'll ever see the 2019 version where he had like 80 something extra base hits, or the 2021 version where he was a 30, 300, 100 guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll ever happen again, but if you get 280 and 25, I think most people will be happy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be tough now too, because obviously we're pretty high on the guys that you have slotted behind him in the lineup, but he doesn't necessarily have like a ton of protection behind him. So if there are guys on in front of him with maybe like 1 or 2 outs and they're in scoring position, I feel like we could kind of see him put more pressure on himself and start to chase more, feeling like he has to do it. But I expect him to bounce back and have a pretty good year.
Yeah, it was a lot easier for him last year when he had Real Muto was right behind him to start the year, right? Because he batted fourth. Yeah, obviously a lot different. JT Real Muto versus Bryson Stott. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit there. Alec Bohm, we're going to get into this, I guess, but a guy that could also make a huge impact with Hoskins out. Because they did not go and get Christian Walker or CJ Cron, which was kind of unrealistic to think could happen in the last week of the season. Or the last week of spring training, if this happened at the beginning of March, maybe that happened, but it's unrealistic to think they could get a long-term solution right now.
Yeah.
To fill that gap, it's not going to be one guy, but if Bohm hits 10 more home runs than he did last year, and Castellanos' OPS is 125 points higher, like that kind of stuff will fill it. And obviously having who I think is going to win MVP of the NL at top of the lineup also helps.
Yeah, definitely. And even looking at the depth, you're not to say backup, because I guess Didi wasn't really a backup last year, but like Sosa at this point in his career is better than Didi was last year as far as an all-around hitter. I think. Sure. So you're getting that type of production off the bench. So those days when Stott, Bohm, or Turner need a day off, like you're not losing. Obviously, you're losing a lot if Sosa's playing over Turner. But compared to where it was last year when Didi was getting those at-bats, the production off the bench is better than it was last year.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I don't love the lineup as much as I did the day Trey Turner signed, but I still think they could manage 2 months without Bryce Harper and then manage another month until they can either Hall becomes a left-handed version of Rhys Hoskins, or B, the Rockies and or Diamondbacks are 25 games under 500 and looking to sell off guys that they don't really have locked up long-term. Cron is a free agent after this year. Walker's a free agent after next year, but he doesn't really fit their timeline considering he's going to be 32 and the rest of their core is mid and early 20s. So I don't think they're going to want to hang on to him if they get a good package. So it's still going to be good in the long run, I think. So I'm not overly worried about it.
Yeah, I think as long as they kind of hold their own for the first 2.5 months, I think that when we look at the end of the season in September, I think that we'll be pretty happy with how the lineup's doing.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, so let's get into it. What we think is going to happen this season. I said record. What you think is going to happen in the postseason? Breakout player, comeback player, and a disappointment. So we'll just start with the record in postseason, then we'll go back and forth with the other stuff.
All right. So for the record, I kind of, not to say took the cheap way out, but their line set at 88.5, and I went right around it. I did 89 and 73. Just, I think the division's really good.
It is.
And the schedule's backloaded. So like we said, we're missing guys early with Suarez on the IL, Harper being out till June, now Hoskins being gone for the year. They'll start to get guys back around June All-Star break, and they could get additions around the All-Star break. So the schedule is pretty backloaded. So hopefully they get guys back early enough that they kind of hit their stride for when the tougher games in the schedule start to come. And I know you and I talked about this, but they really kind of have to make their run like late July, early August, kind of right after the All-Star break. They have a bunch of games with the Orioles, Guardians, Pirates, Marlins, Royals, Nationals. So like not to say an easy stretch, because the Orioles should be better and the Guardians are pretty frisky, but that should be like their timeline, and they should, knock on wood, barring injuries, they should have the majority of their guys there. So I think 89-73 is pretty realistic.
All right, I see it. I have 92 and 70. I'm a little higher. I know the injuries, maybe that's a little overly optimistic. I don't think playing the Braves and Mets as much as last year, that's going to help, obviously. I'm also not 100% sold on the Mets being better than the Phillies this year. The Diaz injury is huge for them. I think they had a bunch of career years from pretty much career platoon players last year, like Mark Hanna and stuff like that. They're an old team. They got 12 guys on their roster who are 34 or older. The Phillies have 2, I think. They're an old team, and how's that gonna, hold up over the course of 162 in a battle with a 3-headed monster in the division where every day matters, every game's a grind. So that is gonna be, interesting to me with the Mets. I still think they're good. Obviously, Lindor and Alonso are great, but to me, there's a little more bust potential with them than there is the Phillies and the Braves. I just think, Scherzer and Verlander, both. Verlander is 40. Scherzer's going to be close to 40 or 39 this year. Verlander pitched into November into the World Series this past year. I'm interested to see how those guys hold up. I saw this on, I can't remember what show it was. I was watching it, but Father Time's undefeated. Those guys eventually it's going to catch up to them. So is it this year? We'll see. To me, the Mets, I think the Phillies could steal a couple more from the Mets than they did last year. But on the flip side, I see the Braves maybe being a little better. Just having Acuna back healthy for a full year. Michael Harris settled in. Spencer Strider settled in. Olsen settled in a new city. I don't know. The whole trade, the Contreras trade with Sean Murphy, was weird to me. I didn't think it was something they had to make. I don't think it makes them any better, but I don't think it makes them any worse, really. Obviously, they're a little weaker at shortstop without Swanson, but I really like the Braves. I think the Braves win the division, but I think the Phillies come in second, and I think the Mets are a game or two behind that.
Yeah, my thought process when kind of just thinking about the Phillies and the Mets are I kind of like the Mets pitching depth a little. Aside, I think our bullpen's better, especially now that Diaz is out, but I think their starter depth is just a lot, not to say a lot, but it's definitely better than ours, and I think it's noticeable. Like our guys that we have waiting in AAA, we had to move Strom up to the rotation, and then we have like Plasmeyer kind of waiting around, and they have Tyler McGill starting in AAA.
Yeah.
And we saw him last year when they combined no-hit us in April or May or whatever. So I just like their starter depth. Like you said, they definitely have more potential for bust, but I think they're also relatively well equipped to handle that potential bust if one of the Scherzer or Verlander go down.
Yeah, that is true. And us, I think the Phillies have a few more wild cards. Like if Painter comes back in June, he could be Spencer Strider or he could be Bailey Falter. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that is something I guess to look at. If he's Spencer Strider, I think the Phillies with a healthy Harper or a healthy Ranger Schwartz, I think they get close to clearing the Mets then in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right, so postseason, how far? I guess what seed? I didn't think about this, but the seed kind of matters now with the extra round in there.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about the playoffs, obviously as we saw last year, it's just so difficult to kind of predict what's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen once you get into the playoffs. So I had us realistically like the third or the fourth best team, depending on health, come playoff time. I gave the Braves and the Padres definite kind of 1 and 2, and then the Cardinals win the Central. But I think if we break right as far as health and guys hitting their stride, I think going into the playoffs we could be playing better than the Cardinals, and overall I think our roster is better. But so I have us as the first wild card, getting the home playoff game, and then I guess that would say I think the Braves are the best team in the National League this year. So I guess that would be a playoff series in the divisional round against the Braves, and that I feel like that's just tough to predict. But call me biased, I had us winning the divisional round and then losing in the championship rounds.
Yeah, so I'm kind of there too. I think I have the championship round lost to. I have them as I have to think about this. The five seed in the playoffs. I think I have the Dodgers 4 and the Mets at 6. The Cardinals, I like we saw last year in the wild card round. The Cardinals are a very good matchup for the Phillies. I know they added Contreras behind the plate and they called up Jordan Walker, who's going to be another great bat for them. But their pitching stinks, in my opinion. Like Wainwright is really old. I think. The guy from the WBC. I can't think of his name. The guy with the must. Yeah,
Michaelis.
Yeah, Michaelis. Yeah, him and some of the other guys they have are very average. I think in terms of a 3-game series, I definitely rather take Wheeler, Nola, Schwartz over what they throw. And they have obviously Helsney in the back of that bullpen. Maybe we broke him because no one's seen him since that day happened. So I don't know. I do like their lineup a lot, but they're a favorable matchup for the Phillies. I think pitching wise, the Phillies can dominate there. So getting matched up with them would be nice. The Dodgers for me, I don't see it. A lot of people are still predicting them to win that division, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm out on the Dodgers.
It's Betts and Freeman, who, okay, yes, 2 Hall of Famers at the top of the lineup. Very nice. I get it. Will Smith is a decent bat. JD Martinez, older, but a good bat. Max Muncy, I don't know what he is because he was horrible last year. So we're worried about kind of the back half of the Phillies lineup. The Dodgers are worried about the back 6 of their lineup in a way. Yeah. So, to me, it's not there for them. Walker Buehler out. Kershaw, another guy, is Father Time going to catch up eventually. So, to me, I think the Phillies actually end up maybe a couple games better than them. Or actually, no, I have them as the 4, a couple games better, than them, but still close enough where I don't think they win 111 games again. I think it may be 94 for them. So getting into a round with them as well would be nice, but I don't know if that'll happen. To me, I don't want to see the Braves again. I just don't see us a second time around, especially in a 7-game instead of a 5, if that is the case. Getting that distance on them, that's going to be hard. The Padres, I know the lineup, they're another team. I'm not overly sold on their pitching. I thought the Phillies kind of exposed it in the playoffs last year, and they brought back the same exact rotation, really, with Musgrove banged up and Darvish and Snell a year older. So I don't know. To me, the Braves are the one team that really scares me. And, I'll give it to the Mets. If Verlander and Scherzer are healthy and you have to face them in a short series, that's a problem. So I do think Championship Series Braves is kind of where it ends this year.
Yeah. I think whether it's, I mean, I know a lot of our guys have pretty good numbers against the Padres pitching, but like that lineup's really good.
It is, yeah.
And our lineup's really good too, so I guess that just comes down to who hits more home runs that series. But I think the Padres or the Braves would be a pretty tough matchup, even though we beat both of them last year. Like you said, referring to the Braves, I think it'd just be tough the second go around against them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think they're going to be stronger this year than last year, and they still won over, 101 games last year. So, yeah, I think they have a legit shot to win it, honestly, this year. I don't know the AL. I feel like a lot of the Astros, obviously, but after the Astros, I kind of think the next 3 or 4 best teams are in the NL. The Yankees are really banged up in their rotation, and what happens when Judge doesn't have a record-breaking season again? So I do honestly think there's a little more likelihood that the World Series champ comes from the NL again.
I agree.
All right, so most improved player. Let's go there.
Most improved. I have Castellanos as far as like coming back from where he was last year. I think that Cave might give him a chance since Cave played so well in spring training and he's a better fielder than Castellanos. I think they're going to try and play Cave in right, especially now that Hoskins is hurt and Hall has to play first. The DH spot kind of opens up, so they could put Cave in right and let Castellanos DH more than he plays right field, get him off his feet, focus on at bats, which was the original plan going into last year. Like you talked about, his on-base percentage was at 367 this spring, and the OPS was 847. So he's clearly worked on – he still hit 240, but he's clearly worked on approach and taking more pitches. And I don't know if you saw the game day yesterday on the MLB app, but that walk that he had.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Was like not even an inch off the plate, but it was a low and away slider, and he took it to walk. Like, he didn't take that pitch once last year. So he's clearly worked on something, whether it was on his own time watching film or with Kevin Long, and they tinkered the swing. It looks more relaxed and just a calmer version of what it was last year and not as much movement. So I think that he will kind of get back to form like we talked about earlier. And another thing that I think might play an important factor or role in that, it seems like everybody that's a fan of the Phillies is kind of like just under the assumption that Castellanos is just going to be like back. So he's not going to take as much heat, or he shouldn't take as much heat at the start of the season. Now, if he struggles for a month, that's very liable to change. But it seems like everybody's kind of behind him right now, so that should kind of let him relax and settle into the season.
Yeah, I have a couple comments on him. I think him coming out and kind of listing all the things that distracted him last year made people a little more understanding of the situation, and he's going to have more leeway this year maybe. And, people just understand what happened last year better, and it's kind of in the past now, and people aren't as mad about it in a sense. I mean, look, they still were almost 2 games away from winning the World Series, and Nick Castellanos had like the worst year of his career. So, when you put it that way, it's really not that bad. I have Castellanos as comeback player, I guess, just because I feel like he's been there before. It's going to come back, but I am expecting a better season than him. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if it'll be like 2019 or 2021 version, but somewhere like his early Detroit years, even I'll take something like that. This is a dude who hit 58 doubles in a year. Like,
yeah,
like there's something in there. You just don't go from that to sucking in a year. I mean, he's 31. It's old, but it's still technically prime years. He's not 37.
Oh, yeah.
He's not 37. He's not 38. Like, there's still a lot left in there. So I'm expecting him to come back. For my improved player, I'm going Bohm. I think he's going to hit 25 home runs this year, which would be awesome. Just another power threat to have, especially with Hoskins out. He looks bigger. He looks more confident both at the plate and in the field. I just see a lot of good coming out of him this year. So hopefully it sticks that way. Hopefully, going back between first and third doesn't mess with him too much. But I think we're in line for a nice Bohm season.
Yeah, I mean, you know how much I love Bohm, but for my kind of breakout guy, I guess I got the comeback and breakout flip. But I tried not to pick Bohm because everybody seems to be in love with Bohm, so I try to be different. I'm a big Brandon Marsh guy.
Okay, yeah.
So I think he's going to have a big year. After we got him, he slashed 288, 319, and the slugging was 455, which is pretty – like it didn't seem like the slugging was 455, but
yeah.
And he still struck out a lot, but in the month and a half, 2 months that we had him, his strikeout rate went from 36% to 29.7%. So kind of like a 6.5, 7 percentage point decrease. And now he had a full off season to kind of make swing adjustments. Last season, he made them pretty quick with Kevin Long. Like he got more compact and lower in his stance. Yeah, but like that happened while he was playing. Like he just got inserted to the lineup and made those adjustments. So he had a full off season to kind of get comfortable and actually take cage swings and get comfortable with his new swing instead of trying to do it against 100 miles an hour and like Sandy Alcantara once a week. So I think that he'll have a better year at the plate. He was a finalist for a Gold Glove Award last year. So like we know he can play defense, and we saw it in the playoffs as long as he doesn't lose balls in the sun like he did multiple times last year. And he was in 89th percentile in sprint speed. So he has the potential to go 20 stolen bases. He only had 10 home runs last year, so I can't say 20-20 potential. But the new rules should help him steal more bases and kind of be a threat to get in scoring position and score more runs for the top of the order with Trey and Kyle up there.
Yeah, and I don't think he was overly shifted, but he is a lefty, so not having the shift, he might get on base a little more too, which will be nice. Yeah, they're going to be aggressive, I think, with him running because they're going to try to put him in scoring position for Trey. So, yeah, I do think Marsh is going to have like a quietly fun year. Like, I don't think it's not going to be an all-star year or anything like that, but I do think it's going to be like quietly fun, quietly good. He's going to be entertaining, and Trey Turner's going to love him, I think, running in front of him on the bases. So, yeah, that is a good one. I like Marsh too. It comes down to getting him to the point where he's like not a platoon player. Like that he could just play against lefties and stuff. That's really the next step for me with him. If that happens, I'm glad we have him for the next 4 years or whatever it is. I guess I'll go disappointment. I don't want to say disappointment, but I don't see Kyle Schwarber hitting 46 home runs again. I think I'll be happy with like 35. The June he had was just insane. So I don't want to say disappointment, but I think anyone thinking a repeat of last year is going to happen, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, so I mean I obviously love Schwarber. It's impossible not to. But I've said this to you before. Like, what happens when June doesn't happen like that? Like it seemed to happen the majority of his career. So I guess like it's tough to say that at this point. What happens if he doesn't? But like realistically, like that pace is not possible every year. So I'm just worried about now the shift is gone. So like the hits will come more throughout the year. So like he shouldn't be at 180 on Memorial Day like he was last year. But yeah, I don't know if like 50 home runs with like 11 or 12 of them in June is realistic to expect again.
Yeah, no, I don't see it, but maybe. I don't. That month was just crazy. So I just don't know if it's going to be that crazy again.
Yeah, as far as the disappointment, I was kind of with you. Like I was going through the roster and I didn't see anybody that like I expected full like, disappointment from, but I feel like the guy that I went with is Kimbrel.
Okay,
like, I feel like a lot of people are just going to see the big name, and we were as fans familiar with him when he was in Atlanta, so we expect, Craig Kimbrel, all-star Atlanta, killed us, closed so many games against us for years.
Right.
Like he hasn't been horrible the last few years, but he definitely hasn't been like good or like great Craig Kimbrell that we remember. He's a pretty heavy fly ball pitcher. He doesn't get a lot of ground balls, and as he's gotten older, the strikeout rate's kind of gone down. It's not like the heavy velocity that it once was. And fly balls seem to find their way into the stands at Citizens Bank Park. So I just don't know if it's sustainable for Kimbrell to kind of have a bounce back year here. And the guy that I was just thinking of when like thinking about Craig Kimbrell being a disappointment, he's fastball, curveball. We saw that with Knebel last year.
Yeah.
If Kimbrell starts blowing saves early, if they have him as a closer, I think we could kind of see how fans start to turn on him like they turned on Knebel when he came in the ninth. And next thing you know, we're in June and Kimbrell's the 6th, 7th inning guy trying to figure himself out again.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. I was concerned about the K rate when we signed him. Now he has 13 strikeouts in 8 innings in spring training. I don't know if that means anything. I don't think it really does, but I'm just going to point it out. I'm interested to see where he is in this bullpen. Because, you know, it's like if you want the guy with all the experience in the world, yeah, it's him. There's probably not a more experienced closer in baseball right now than him. But do you trust him? I think it's going to be Sir Anthony to start. I know they're probably not going to come out and name a guy. I think it's going to be Sir Anthony. And then I think, you know, Kimbrell will be like the 7th. And then Soto and Alvarado will be, you know, they're both lefties. So it'll be like situational. One will get the 8th, and then one will get like a big situation, maybe in the 6th or in the 7th or something. But I don't think he's going to be at the back end unless the other guys struggle and they're like, okay, let's put the veteran guy back there and see what happens.
See, my thought process was I think they're going to start him back there because he has that experience. And I think they're going to kind of it's tough. Not tough. It's a good luxury to have because, like, we have 3 and 4, if you're counting Kimbrell, like 4 legitimate dudes back there between Soto, Dominguez, Alvarado, and Kimbrell. So you could kind of disperse them how you want to. But like we saw last year when it was time for the playoffs and we had Eflin as like the de facto closer. Yeah. And then you could just put Sir Anthony out there in the 7th or the 8th whenever the heart of the order was up. I feel like they might kind of use that strategy to start the year. And if it works out that Kimbrell's consistently the closer and he's gotten comfortable back there, then they could just do that. Or if he isn't comfortable, like if he hasn't been good back there, then they could switch to Soto or Dominguez that could go back there and just consistently shut guys down at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what they were going for this year. They wanted to give themselves more options back there, whereas, you know, Eflin being the closer, a situation like that wouldn't happen again. So I do see what you're saying. I don't know. That is what I'm interested about. I like the bullpen. I just don't know what the quote unquote lineup is going to be back there. So that is the one thing heading into Thursday that I'm most interested about back there. You have any awards? Any guys like a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger, anything like that?
Yeah. So I have JT, just the usual like Silver Slugger, Gold Glover. I don't think it's realistic to expect 2020 from him again. 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. But like the only real competition that I see as far as like I was going through catchers in the National League, and I mean throw a name out there if you think I missed, but like Sean Murphy. But like
yeah, I mean Contreras and Smith, I guess we'll have.
Yeah, I guess Will Smith. Yeah. Well, I forgot about Will Smith, but like. I was thinking of Sean Murphy because he had Gold Glove, Silver Slugger type year in Oakland, and he's in a platoon. Like I'm assuming they're gonna kind of he'll catch the majority of games, but like Travis D'Arnaud's still there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how well he'll kind of stack up to JT. Assuming JT probably won't catch 140, 145. Like he did last year, but I still think he'll get more than either of the Braves guys. So, yeah, I guess Will Smith could stop that. I have Trey winning the Silver Slugger, and the top 5 in MVP. I don't want to commit to him winning just because I seem to be a bad jinx as far as that goes. So I'll just leave it at top 5. You kind of touched on this, but I have Painter potentially winning Rookie of the Year or being in the top 3, depending on what his health looks like. I think he has a similar role year to Spencer Strider last year, who finished second. So just depending on what his health looks like, I think he could be up there for Rookie of the Year. And then I have Marsh, Gold Glove.
Okay, I like those. So I'm still gonna give Trey the MVP train just because I went through the whole thing last week, so I'm gonna ride with it. JT Silver Slugger, yes, I'm in on that. I'm gonna say Ranger Suarez Gold Glove. I feel like he's gotten close the past couple years and didn't pitch enough. If he's back by April 20th this year and he stays healthy, then I'm gonna say Ranger Suarez Gold Glove.
Yeah, if he's healthy, it's last year it wasn't even close, and he missed the innings mark by 10. I feel like it was something so minuscule, but he wasn't even close statistic wise.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say that. I think Derek Hall gets in the home run derby.
I can see that.
I'm gonna put that as like a weird thing out there. I'm not gonna give Aaron Nola the Cy Young because I'm not giving the Phillies the MVP and the Cy Young, but I was on that whole Rhys Hoskins contract year train where he's gonna hit like 40 home runs and drive in 120. That can't happen anymore now, unfortunately. So I'm gonna get on now that Nola's gonna be unsigned. I'm gonna go get on the Nola contract year train and say it's like a sub-3 ERA. So I'm gonna say finishes in the top 3 in Cy Young voting there. So that's what I have for that. So we went through everything really quick. I was thinking about this week. So the Phillies face Jacob deGrom on Thursday. That is like the biggest name they faced on opening day that I can remember in like a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, the closest one, and it's not even like, don't take this as they're in the same ballpark, but like just thinking back past opening days, like Frankie Montas last year.
Yeah.
And the only reason that was a big name is because everybody wanted us to trade for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the times we played the Braves, it was like Julio Teheran and Mike.
Yeah, it was always like even McCutcheon's grand slam, like leadoff home run a few years ago was off to Heron. Like, that's all the Braves always just threw at us.
Yeah. And they played the Marlins the COVID year. I couldn't tell you who the Marlins starter was. I'm very blank on that. And then I'm trying to go back a little further. I know we had an opening day with the Pirates at some point. I don't think they had anyone crazy to throw at us. This is the biggest name I could remember the Phillies facing on opening day in a really long time.
Yeah, and of course it's DeGrom. I'm so happy when he left the division.
And we get the first game of the year.
We don't have to see him like 5-6 more times throughout the year, but of course he finally leaves us, and then opening day we get him.
Yep. I'm just hoping we could beat the Rangers for once this year. 0-4 last year on, in my opinion, a way worse Rangers team than the team they have this year. So
yeah, you can't bank on Simeon and Seager being that bad again.
Yeah, no. So I think the Phillies are going to struggle a little bit to start the year. 3 at Texas, 3 at the Yankees. I'm not overly optimistic the Phillies are going to get out to a hot start, but I used to overreact to April and May baseball, and then last year happened, and I will never do it again. I will stay calm until August from now on. It might be hard, but that's what I'm going to tell myself.
Yeah, there's no shot you're going to be able to do it.
I know. It just feels like last year, I don't know, woke me up a little bit. I didn't bring this up either when I was talking about the record and stuff, but the injuries and everything, but a full year of Rob Thompson is going to matter. They were on like a 95 win pace with him if he would have been there the full year. I mean, they dug themselves out of what? They were 9 games under 500 when he took over. So,
because they went on that 9 game win streak right after.
Yeah, and it just got them to 500 or whatever. Yeah. So, that's something else I'm not going to discredit this year, even with Harper and Hoskins out Harper for a while, Hoskins for all of it. But Yeah, that's all I got. I don't know if you got anything else.
No, yeah, that'll definitely play a factor. I feel like everybody pretty much loves him in the clubhouse, so I don't think I think they're also coming into the season loose, but at the same time with a different kind of chip on their shoulder. Like obviously the playoff drought's over, but
Yeah.
a lot of the interviews or articles that I've read, they says like unfinished business. We want to get back there. We know what it's like now. We know what we have to do to get back there. So now that's all we're thinking about. Like they all just seem kind of intoxicated by what October was like for them and for the fans, and just like in general what that month was like for everybody involved.
Yeah, for sure. And Middleton especially. I expect them, if they're close, I expect aggressive at the trade deadline, especially if they need to fill first base. So I don't know. We might do weekly shows throughout the season. Depends. Any big news, we'll come on, do something. But yeah, this is all we got for the first week of the season. So enjoy the fact that baseball is back, I guess is the best way to put it. We'll see you next